So if you caught our last video on Azazel, you already know we covered how he could show up in Avengers Doomsday and a bunch of other wild stuff about him. But today, we're switching things up a bit because we're diving into how Azazel might show up in Doctor Strange 3. And not just that, but how he could actually team up with Strange to help save the multiverse. Sounds nuts, right? But it kinda makes sense once you dig into his comic book history. Before we get into the new stuff, here's a quick refresher. Azazel is one of the most underrated and mysterious characters in Marvel Comics, and he's been lurking in the background for a while now. He first showed up in Uncanny X-Men number 428, created by Chuck Austin and Sean Phillips. Azazel is this ancient mutant who's not just powerful, he's straight up demonic. He's been compared to Mephisto, which tells you a lot because Mephisto is like Marvel's go-to for supernatural chaos. But Azazel isn't just some spooky teleporting villain. He's the father of a bunch of mutant kids, including Kiwi Black, and at least originally, Nightcrawler. Now, if you've only seen the movies, you might remember him from X-Men First Class, where Jason Flemyng played him. He looked cool, sure, but they didn't really get into his story. Fast forward to Deadpool and Wolverine, and now Eduardo Gago Muñoz is playing him in the MCU. We don't know how big his role will be yet, but his inclusion is a sign that Marvel might finally explore his wilder comic roots. Azazel's main arc in the comics, the Draco, reveals that he's part of the Neyaphem, a group of mutant demons banished to a hellish dimension called the Brimstone Dimension by their angelic rivals, the Cheyarafim. While stuck there, Azazel hatches a dark plan: father a bunch of mutant children with human women so he can use them to return to Earth. That's where Mystique comes in. While married to Baron Christian Wagner, she has a fling with Azazel and boom, Nightcrawler is born, though Marvel retconned that part in 2023. Still, the connection lingers. What's cool is that Azazel isn't your average bad guy. He's tied into themes of legacy and identity, especially through his kids. And with both Mystique and Nightcrawler rumored to return in Avengers Doomsday, it feels like Marvel is setting the stage to go deeper with his story. And that brings us to Doctor Strange 3. Given how Strange deals with dimensions, multiversal rifts, and magical threats, bringing in Azazel, who can rip open portals to the Brimstone Dimension like it's nothing, actually makes a ton of sense. Especially if the usual tech starts failing. Someone like Azazel could be the wildcard hero they never expected. Plus, Nightcrawler's teleportation ties into dimension hopping too, just on a smaller scale. Even though Azazel's usually on the villain side, a multiversal crisis changes the rules. He might team up with Strange or Scarlet Witch, not out of trust, but out of necessity. And with his son Nightcrawler involved, there's bound to be some emotional weight to the mission. Now, all this said, let's talk about how Azazel could pop up in Doctor Strange 3. Well, according to his comic book roots, especially from the storyline The Draco, Azazel isn't just a demon-looking mutant, he's got one foot in the magical world too. That's exactly what makes him such a perfect fit for a Doctor Strange film. His powers don't just scream X-Men, they also flirt with the kind of dark, dimensional mysticism that Stephen Strange deals with on a daily basis. He's not limited to brute strength or just mutant genetics. He's got this whole ancient supernatural angle that would fit right in alongside creatures from the dark dimension or the twisted spaces we saw in Multiverse of Madness. Because as we know, Jason Flemyng first brought Azazel to life in X-Men First Class, where he mostly served as a silent henchman with cool teleportation powers, but no real story. Then Eduardo Gago Muñoz stepped in as the new Azazel in Deadpool and Wolverine, which opened the door for a proper MCU version. But now that Marvel's reshaping its mutant lineup, it's the perfect time to bring a deeper, more complex version of Azazel into the mystical spotlight. And what better place for that than Doctor Strange 3? Here's the angle. Doctor Strange 3 could easily tap into the chaos of the multiverse collapsing, where dimensions are leaking into each other, timelines are overlapping, and demonic entities are using the confusion to claw their way into the main universe. Enter Azazel, trapped for centuries in the Brimstone Dimension, just waiting for the right moment to escape. And with all the magical barriers falling apart, he finally finds a way out. It's not just about causing destruction, it's about reclaiming territory, power, and maybe even revenge against the angelic forces, the Cheyarafim, who banished him and his kind. Strange, of course, would be the one trying to stop this dimensional invasion. But what makes it more interesting is that Azazel isn't your typical villain. He doesn't want to rule Earth. He wants to tear open a gateway so his people, the Neyaphem, can return. And that means Strange might have to actually consider working with him, at least temporarily. Because in this version, Azazel isn't just evil, he's ancient, cunning, and maybe even justified in his hatred of the divine forces that cast him out. You could also tie this into the lingering impact of the multiverse-shattering events from Loki and Secret Wars. Maybe Azazel's prison, the Brimstone Dimension, used to be sealed off completely, but thanks to the events of Multiverse of Madness and Kang's timeline meddling, that seal is weakening. Strange could be investigating strange magical anomalies, thinking it's Dormammu or even remnants of Wanda's chaos magic, only to discover that something far older and stranger is trying to come through, something that smells like sulfur. Bringing Azazel in this way allows Marvel to blend their mutant and mystic corners without needing a full X-Men crossover just yet. And it also gives Doctor Strange a new kind of opponent, one who uses teleportation as a form of dimensional invasion. Not to mention the symbolism, you've got Strange, the Sorcerer Supreme who protects the fabric of reality, going up against a demon-mutant hybrid who literally rips through that fabric with his powers. And if they really want to get spicy, they could tease Mystique or Nightcrawler showing up too. Maybe Strange finds out Azazel's bloodline is tied to other characters he's crossed paths with in the multiverse. That would set up future team-ups or conflicts without needing to throw everyone into one film. Just a few well-placed cameos or visions could plant seeds for what's to come in Secret Wars or Doomsday. Now, as for how to play this new version of Azazel, he shouldn't be just a red-skinned teleporter who snarls and stabs. This time, lean into the myth. Make him ancient, theatrical, and intelligent, almost like a darker, more bitter version of Loki with the same magnetic charisma but soaked in hellfire. Give him an accent, maybe something old and biblical. Let him speak in riddles and parables, but with an edge that reminds you he's absolutely dangerous. Think of him like a fallen angel with an agenda, one who doesn't care if Earth burns as long as it helps him open the gate back to his people. Also, visually, this Azazel should feel less like a henchman and more like a gothic warlord. Give him robes mixed with armor, glowing runes on his skin that flare when he uses his powers, and maybe a hint of ancient magic fused with his mutant genes. His teleportation shouldn't just be flashy, it should look unnatural, like space is tearing apart every time he vanishes. That kind of detail really leans into the magical horror side of Doctor Strange's world. So instead of rehashing Azazel as a background baddie, Doctor Strange 3 could finally give him depth. Show us the pain of being exiled, the madness of being trapped in a burning dimension, and the ambition of a creature who's not fully evil but has no problem destroying everything to get what he wants. That's the kind of villain who would challenge Strange, not just with magic, but morally. Because sometimes, the worst monsters are the ones who think they're the real victims. And that's it for today's video. Thanks for watching. But if you want us to keep the conversation going and explore how this could set up Azazel's role in Avengers Secret Wars, let us know in the comments below, and we'll see you in the next one.